some Japanese people are still tampering with this history.
It's time the world sees the full truth. Watch closely because the narrative is changing.
I just finished watching a movie, Dongji Rescue by China. As a fan of war movies, I like this movie very much. First of all, the big scene of the film is very real and exciting, and the battle scenes at sea are frightening, which can be said to be a high-standard industrial blockbuster. After watching Dongji Rescue, I learned about the history of China fishermen's rescue of British prisoners, which was very incredible and shocking. Fishermen in China don't have bulletproof vests, can you imagine that? Advanced life-saving equipment or even decent weapons. They only rely on small fishing boats and fishing nets to pull unfamiliar British soldiers back from the brink of death again and again. This humanitarian spirit is very worthy of our admiration. When I looked up this history, I found that some Japanese people are still tampering with this history, claiming that they saved the prisoners of war. I don't quite understand why the Japanese distorted the facts. This behavior is not very good. As a peace lover, I hope Dongji Rescue can be shown all over the world so that more people can know the truth and cherish the hard-won peace together.
I could feel my rage building up inside of me. Why the Chinese people really still hate the Japanese about. So I've just come out of the cinema having watched a film with my wife called Dead to Rights about the Nanjing Massacre. And actually my wife took me because she went to see it yesterday with her mum and she thought that it's something that I should see to really learn about it. And you know, it was wow. In the UK, we are taught about the Second World War because we're a big part of it too, but our focus is mainly on the European front. And I'm someone who I enjoy reading about history, so I knew about the Nanjing Massacre, but I never really figured how brutal the Japanese was, you know, like the way that they just went about massacring the people. I mean, it was really to see it in film form as opposed to just reading about it. You know, there's a saying in English of a picture paints 1,000 words. And honestly, I can totally see that. You know, it was horrible. It was horrific. It moved me to understand like why it's such a big deal for you here in China. Why the Chinese people really still hate the Japanese about this, because it's one thing to perpetrate this action, to do it. It's another thing completely to deny its existence and say it never happened. I mean, the evidence is there. It's kind of irrefutable in my mind. Despite what happened with Britain and, like, say, Germany in the war, at least they admitted their mistakes. At least they said, we are wrong. You know, they kneeled down, they accepted whatever punishment they were given. And on a slight side note as well, it was so good to see a really well-made war movie. I haven't seen a good one come out of Hollywood in so many years now. You know, like Hollywood films are meh, but this was really well produced. I thought the actors were all great. It felt very real. You know, I don't know how many of the effects were actually real or how many were CGI, I don't know, but like it felt true. It felt very gritty and dark and like just the horror of war and the time there. Absolutely. Wow. It was a really strong, powerful movie. And honestly, if more movies that are made in China come out with English subtitles, if they're anything like this, if the production values are like this, I will happily go and see it. I missed out on the WWII craze because there's no subtitles. Really impressed with the film. I think it was fantastic. I'd recommend to go and see it, anyone, because it will really open your eyes to what happened. I could feel my rage building up inside of me at some point, you know, like the way that they just took advantage like that. So, yeah, really, really great movie of what is a horrific subject. 我是英语老师 Adam， 再见。
After watching the movie Dongji Rescue, I was deeply moved. At the same time, I sincerely want to say thank you to those fishermen. Thank you for saving my compatriots. This was the first time I learned about this history and I was very surprised. It turned out that during the World War II, When our ancestors were in a desperate situation, it was Chinese fishermen who risked their lives to save them. The incredible courage and humanitarian spirit of the Chinese fishermen are truly admirable. As the descendants of those who were helped, I once again offer this long overdue gratitude to the brave fishermen. Thank you. Thank you. After watching the movie, I searched for Japan's interpretation of this history, and I found that they deliberately distorted, hiding the truth for so long. I'm confused and angry about their behavior. Why do they do this? Why are they unwilling to admit history? It was clearly the Chinese who saved people. I sincerely hope that this movie can be shown in more countries to expose the lies fabricated by the Japanese and let more people know the truth of the history and see these kind and brave Chinese people.
I just watched the movie Dongji Rescue and was shocked. Before this, I knew nothing about the history that Chinese fishermen saved British soldiers 83 years ago. When the movie showed that in 1942, fishermen from Zhoushan rowed small fishing boats and rescued those British soldiers under the guns of the Japanese, I was very surprised. Their bravery and righteousness are spiritual wealth that all mankind should cherish. We must thank these kind and brave Chinese fishermen. This movie was also made with great care. There were scenes of huge ships sinking and fishermen fighting with the Japanese on the sea. The waves were crashing against the small boats and the gunshots and explosions were continuous. Watching it in the cinema felt like I was personally involved, and the experience was really good. After watching the movie, I especially looked it up, and indeed, there was this story in our records. It was recorded that Chinese men risked their lives to save our compatriots. I'm really very grateful to kind Chinese people, but at the same time, I also learned that Japanese government actually claimed that they saved hundreds of British prisoners of war and even denied the shooting. Why do they still distort history? This kind of behavior is really very uncomfortable. If the souls of our compatriots who died because of this knew, they would probably not rest in peace. I especially hope that this movie can be shown in Japan so that the Japanese there can know the truth. After watching this movie, I think the spirit of mutual assistance shown by Chinese fishermen in saving British prisoners of war back then is very good. Now, there are still various international disputes that make people from different countries and different cultural backgrounds constantly quarrel. The whole world should learn this spiritual mutual assistance. People should have more understanding and fewer disputes and live in harmony. Dongji Rescue is a good movie, worth watching. It can help us see the truth of the past and also teach us how countries should get along with each other.
Hello guys, my name is Miku and I'm Indian. I'm living in China. I used to make videos about stories and traditional stuff in China. So today my experience I want to share with you. I think you already know guys, this movie Dongji Rescue. I really don't know about this story before. After watching this movie when I was watching in the theater, and I feel literally crying how Japanese army killed innocent people, innocent child and their family. It's disgusting and it was horrible while watching it. I can't stop myself, crying. I was thinking like it happened to Chinese people, although they were just helping UK army because Japanese army was going to do something bad with UK army just because of Chinese people helping and they got killed by Japanese army guys. This is disgusting. And the acting of the actor, it's amazing. And he's really amazing. I would say it's amazing guys. You should watch this movie.
Netanyahu says, we're not going to occupy Gaza. We're going to free Gaza from Hamas. Noble words? No, shameless and hypocritical. We Chinese have heard this before. Over 80 years ago, Japanese troops invaded China, causing 35 million casualties, including 20 million deaths. And guess what they told the world at the time? So-called Joint Declaration of Greater East Asia. World peace rests on each nation in its rightful place, aiding one another, and sharing in its prosperity of all. The Japanese army claimed they came to help us achieve that. But we never wanted that. So did even Netanyahu ask people of Gaza if this is what they want? And do you really believe him?
Today we're going to do a history lesson, and I'm going to tell you the story behind the Grape of Nanjing, part of what people describe as the Asian Holocaust and one of the most infamous accounts of war crimes committed in Asia in modern history. This is important because I'm seeing comments like this, which is not good. This sentiment needs to be stopped, which is why I'm here. Let's break it down. Now, I don't want to keep saying the word grape, so we're going to call it by its other name. The Nanjing Massacre. The Nanjing Massacre took place during the Second Sino-Japanese War, a war between the Japanese and the Chinese, which started in 1937. This was the start of World War II in Asia. Fun fact, China at this time was ruled by the Guangdong, a party which would later form what we now know as Taiwan. A story for another time. So, the Second Sino-Japanese War began in July of 1937, and Nanjing was a big priority for the Japanese because it was the capital of China at the time. They would very quickly succeed in capturing the city, doing so by December of 1937. And thus began the massacre. Over the next few months, Japanese soldiers would ravage the city. Executions, rape, arson, torture. It was a free-for-all. Civilians, women, children, babies. No one was safe. Chinese civilians would sometimes off themselves before letting the Japanese get to them. I don't even know how safe this stuff is to talk about on here, but I will give you one example of how creative the Japanese were. Here's a poster of two Japanese soldiers competing to see who could first off 100 Chinese with a sword. It's wild. The body toll from Nanjing alone was estimated to be a wide range, 100,000 to 300,000. I mean, how do you even track that? Especially back then. And this was not the only site of Japanese war crimes committed against the Chinese. Remember, this was a war. Before Nanjing, the Japanese had conquered Shanghai, for example, and similar activities would happen there. It's just that Nanjing was the most famous account. So all this in Nanjing took place between 1937 and 1938, and the war would end in 1945 with the Japanese surrender that officially ended World War II. And by that time, the casualties from the war on both the Japanese and Chinese sides was estimated to be around 10 million, with China taking most of that. That's the story of Nanjing. The 1930s and 40s were a very chaotic time for China, to say the least. It was a very historically rich period of war, civil war, political movements, and Nanjing was one of the events that stood out. So I hope you learned something, and I just want to say that I love the Chinese, I love the Japanese. Let's all get along, but let's not minimize history. And if you're still here, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.
I haven't seen a lot of Chinese movie, but I was curious to see this one.
Like I said, movie quality, it's better than any historical movie I've ever seen.
Surprise!
比我想中的还要让人相信，还要真好，
触动心灵的一个东西。
这是什么人？我们听得懂不懂？我们就是帮他。
人他都是命，这个是最让我生气的这部分。
Overall idea, I think movie was great and made me learn about this historical event, which I didn't know. My heart burned with Chinese and English people, and movie made me feel it very deeply.
But this one managed to put me tears in my eyes. Impressed. Like I told you, I was really moved by the, all this moment where you see the Chinese people like gathering.
要么就杀光我，杀个光！今天这海，王爷出定。
中国人非常勇敢，他们真的非常伟大。如果说没有他们的话，就不会有现在的我们。
To maintain it and to spread it all around the world, and also the memory of these people must live on.
海上有难，必救。